Have you ever imagined your own funeral?
Yes.
Who will do the eulogy? Who will be your pallbearer? Who will attend or even care? I attended my own funeral. Let me explain. But before I do, I need to disclose that no one died or was injured in making this speech. On a typical day where I was happily playing solitaire and checking out Facebook at work, I got the call. June 6th, the anniversary of D-Day. Not World War II. Displacement Day. The day my 23-year job was eliminated. Just like that, it was all over. Hard work, tenure, and skills had nothing to do with this cost-cutting decision. Is it curious that my first thought wasn't to call my wife, that I had to find a new Toastmasters club? On my ride to work on that fateful day, a news report announced 175,000 new jobs in the U.S. On my ride home, I was on the other side. One of the 11.6 million unemployed. To grasp the magnitude, take the entire population of New York City, then add 4 million people. The call was like a shot to the head. My work identity was gone immediately. I was being put to rest and people were preparing for my funeral. Condolences rolled in. Hugs happened. Tears flowed. How will people see you when you're gone? An old manager once asked if I ran through a wall, would people follow? At the time, I didn't know the answer. I needed to know the answer. That was a lifeline and time for action. Fast forward 6 years later to D-Day. I don't recall a more calming day in my life. A day of self-reflection, a chance to hover over my dead body and ask, was my life and career a success? The notes flooded in. Tom, you touched me. Personally and professionally more than you'll ever know. Tom, we love you. This is your next speech. I ran through the wall, and people followed. But how was I going to tell my 3 daughters that Dad was being sent to the farm, just like his childhood dog? The spending freeze on shoes, clothes, and pizza is worse than death to teenagers. My middle child's head tilted at a mourner's angle as a tear slowly rolled down her cheek as if to follow my casket. My youngest held me in a bear hug as if it was the last time ever. My social media conscious 16-year-old told me that all responses to the relocation question on Facebook was, no, as if I had a choice. The denial, the anger, the acceptance, the exhaustive feeling of having my family watch my own daughter. But my support system refused to let the last nail go into the coffin as they put in a crowbar made of emails, phone calls, and leads. I was being resurrected. How many of you have a will prepared? A will reduces stress and chaos. The run through the wall question 6 years earlier had been my wake-up call. I didn't realize how it would prevent my professional passing. My eyes were wide open as I built an extraordinary career-saving and life-changing network. In Keith Ferrazzi's book, Never Eat Alone, he notes, build it before you need it. Real relationships built over the years provided me meaning and are the reason for my success. I wasn't 6 feet under. I was 6 degrees from Kevin Bacon, or at least my next big league. I wasn't flatline. I was alive. And my support system was my CPR. My funeral, my job loss was a celebration of life, not a funeral. It reminded me how deep my love and appreciation really are for my family, friends, and network. Unbelievable. I wasn't defined by my job. I defined my own life and was going to do my funeral my way. No, I'm not going to belt out Sinatra. I lost my job, but I found me. I use my displacement as a reaffirmation that when I leave this earth, I'm leaving with no regrets. Think about your own future. When When your spirit's hovering over the mourners, did you give them something to mourn about? That didn't come out right. Let's go back to the original question. Have you ever imagined your own funeral? My eulogy was better known by the many key people in my network. My eulogy was shouted out by the people who blew my trumpet with humbling accounts of who I was and had become. My pallbearers carried me when I couldn't go any further. The overwhelming flood of notes and messages showed me care. I have to admit, I started writing this speech immediately after I got the call, including the end. It wasn't overconfidence, just a belief that I was surrounded by an ironclad network that refused to stop giving me answers. Are you ready to see your own future? I saw mine. And it was beautiful. What does that speech have anything to do with authors?
Anyone in the arts.
I sure tried. It's part of the introduction of my next book, D-Day, when my job was looking for a job. And the part of this is understanding that a book reading, a book signing, a presentation can be anything you want it to be. I'll ask you, and I hope I get the right answers. Did it grab your attention?
Yes.
Could you find a way to relate to that story somewhere in there? I hope that you could. I thought I'd share a true story with you, out of, ironically, not my public speaking book, but my other. Build credibility and success through effective communication. My daughter was given a note from a little boy named Adam, asking her to, quote, go out with him. The teacher saw the note and asked my daughter about it. She said she thought it came from Adam, and that it had just been sitting on her desk. The teacher went to Adam and said, "Did you write this note?" He replied, "No." She asked Chris, a little boy who sat across from Adam, "Is this note from you?" Chris replied, "No." Now the teacher was a little confused. She said to Chris, "You don't know anything about this note." Chris said, "Oh, I know about it." Now the teacher was a little annoyed and said, "But I just asked you if you wrote it and you said no." Chris said, "No. You asked if it was from me and it's not. It's from Adam." So the teacher said, "Adam, I asked if this note was from you and you said no." Adam said, "No. You asked if I wrote it. My handwriting isn't very good, so I had Chris write it for me." Do you understand how important effective communication is? Effective communication, verbally and in writing, can make the difference between someone wanting to buy your book, someone wanting to pick up and flipping through your book, or someone who just wants to walk by and doesn't want to hear anything. Does anyone know who Jeff Foltz is? Jeff Foltz is an author through Maine Authors. I was with him at a book signing. Highly impressed with his skills. Because what he does with his audience, an audience of one or an audience of 100, is he engages them through the use of open-ended questions. He wrote this book called Binder about this cross-country skier, and he has a big poster of it. And he says, "Have you ever seen a picture like this about a skier? What's a skier mean to you?" You even know what Binder is? And all of a sudden, no, tell me more. And he brings them in. He's engaging the audience. Even when they're walking by the table, he's finding a way to engage them. I've seen authors sit at the table and quietly sit by their books in the hope that someone would buy them. I say that because I am one of them, and I had done that. And you don't sell an awful lot of books that way. You can't sell books by hope. I was sitting in the airport down in Portland doing one of the book sales that I've done a couple times down there now. They're travelers. They're running by you. They are in a hurry. So when I didn't sell a whole lot of books, I wasn't surprised. I thought, man, I'm just having a bad day. Then I decided to have a little bit of fun. And someone would walk by and say, hey, you want to buy a good book? And then, no. You want to buy a bad one? You'd be surprised the number of people who stopped and came back. You have to take those people that are going to walk by you blindly and stop them enough to have a conversation and engage them. What's that have to do with public speaking? Everything. That is public speaking. I realized when it comes to public speaking, using the same example, sitting at the table, you also have to be obvious. There's a poster of me that's this tall and this wide with pictures of my book on it, and the first thing they would say to me is, are you the author? But the difference between someone sitting at that table hawking books or someone sitting at that table who put their blood, sweat, and tears into that book is a big difference. You have to bring that difference out and bring people to you. What's that have to do with public speaking? Everything. That is public speaking. You have to prepare on how to engage the audience. How to quickly think on your feet. Know that it's more than just signing a book, finding a way to engage the audience. We are engaged in unprepared conversations daily. This is public speaking. An author trying to get their words out there must be able to have a conversation to generate enough interest for them to stop, like Jeff does, to have a conversation so they can spend the 30 seconds to figure out what your book is all about, what you are all about. So this covers, you're sitting at a table, that covers the book signing piece. But what about book signings or book readings, presentations? What is the audience expecting from you? How have you marketed how you're going to do this? Do people know what they're going to get when they come in? Is it a true book reading where you're going to pull out the book and read chapters? Is it going to be a presentation? Is it going to be both? Have you asked the organizers what they want? A lot of my presentations are built for larger audiences. I've been to book signings and book readings and 2 people have shown up. I still have to have a conversation with those 2. So I had to ask the audience, what do you want to get out of it? So instead of giving them a 45-minute full-blown presentation, I asked. And now I'm in their corner, and they're in mine, and we're having real live dialogue. All of that is public speaking. What preparations have you made before you come to a speaking engagement? I was here an hour before. Because part of that fear of doing a presentation, a book signing, whatever it may be, is going to be that new environment, those things that are sitting in front of you, you're not sure which way to turn. You have a lot of control. By controlling those things, your fear goes down. I was able to work on, or assist in, how the seats were set up. Where I wanted to screen, where my comfort level was going to be. I was playing to my comfort level. It reduces fear and anxiety. So I was sitting at a panel discussion down in Annapolis, and I was the moderator of a book discussion, and there were 7 other authors. And I asked the question, you have 1 minute, and 1 minute or less, to tell us about your book. The first person went on for 5 minutes. Lost the audience. Because they know that they're taking away from the other people's time. Second person came up and said, look at me! Look how great I am! And made it all about her, or at least that was my perception as an audience. Third person goes on and said, this is the first book I've ever written, and I don't know what to say. She didn't know what to say or what to do. Her credibility is in question right now. And then the last person, she's an author of children's. And in 30 seconds, she told this touching, warming story that got all of our attention. And I don't remember what the other books were about. I remember hers. 30 seconds. It wasn't 7 minutes. She didn't need 7 minutes. She touched your heart in that period of time. very nice of you, Cheryl, to give 10 seconds, but the new studies have said you have 7 seconds. You have 7 seconds to make a difference, to grab someone's attention, and they will make that decision whether they're going to even look at your book or not. What's your elevator speech? What is an elevator speech, anybody?
It has to be quick because it's measured in floors, but I can't remember what the guideline is.
Your elevator speech is you. It's your it's a short biography knowing you're going to be on an elevator and you don't have an awful lot of time to tell somebody about it. It's your bio, but as authors, we not only have the bio piece of it, we have the I have to pitch my book piece of it. If your pitch is, do you want to buy my book, how does that differ from anyone else's out there? You have to prepare your elevator speech. If you take nothing more out of today but to write an elevator speech, do it. Jot down some notes, a 2-minute version, a 5-minute version, and a 10-minute version. And write down things that are important about you. And take things that are important about your book, and then as the circumstances come up, you can adapt it based off of your needs. It's not about a matter of memorizing every single circumstance that was out there. I mean, I've had people ask, how's your book different than everyone else's out there? That's a typical question, but are you prepared to answer it? Now, in this very moment. And if you're not, do some work on it and practice and prepare. I've also had people ask me, well, why did you select the references that you did? Huh? So I can't put every circumstance down in an elevator speech, but what I can do is be confident enough in my speaking ability and communication skills to be able to say, that's an interesting question, let me tell you how I got there. It's about being able to adapt. I found a common thread among authors, not all of us, but reclusive, painfully shy, rather be writing than in front of a group of people. That does include me. And then you also have the opposite people who are like, I'm comfortable in front of people, I'm just going to wing it. There is a message here. The message is, regardless of skill level that you have as speaking, it must constantly be refined and honed. The premise of my book is, number one, that public speaking is more about confidence than it is about communication skills. 2, public speaking is more than a lectern, a podium, a stage, a microphone. You run into it every single day. You can't avoid it. 3, it's not as hard as you think. The hardest part is when you avoid it. And then taking that first step might even be harder. But once you start taking those little steps, that fear starts to shrink. Your goal is to shrink that fear just a little bit at a time. 4, public speaking is a learned skill that must constantly be refined and honed. And finally, your success level is directly correlated to your ability to communicate effectively. You will sell more books when you can communicate effectively. So part of public speaking is learning to be clear, concise, and succinct. Have you ever heard that person that's just been rambling on and on and on and on and on and on? I'm going to share a story with you. My wife and very naive 14-year-old daughter were driving down the road when my daughter asked what that abandoned building was. My very reluctant wife answered, that was a topless bar. Now, before you think I'm about to get inappropriate, my daughter asked, what'd they do when it rained? In all seriousness, a few years ago, that would have taken me 20 minutes to tell you. Clear, concise, succinct. Public speaking is a skill that we must constantly work at. So ask yourself, what is the quality of your communication? Not just the written part, because we have editors that can help us with that part, but you can't edit your public speaking as it's happening. But once we get past that fear and the angst and we're in the middle of an interaction or a conversation, ask yourself, what is the quality of that? Are you saying, like buy my book? You know, right, really, my favorite now, the new one that's out there, literally, everybody says literally now. The quality of your communication is an indication of how you communicate, and people will, whether you like it or not, correlate your public public speaking to your written word. Your credibility is at stake. People are going to ask in their minds, what type of credibility do you have? Does anyone remember when Caroline Kennedy ran for the New York Senate? It didn't last very long. And the reason for that, I'm convinced, is a 30-minute TV interview that she had. In 30 minutes, I believe there's anywhere, depends where you look, anywhere from 100 to 300 yo-nos that were in there. She had a very strong message, but no one heard it. All they heard was, like. And she lost her audience. Her credibility was shot. It's not a coincidence she dropped out of the race shortly after. You have to do a gut check for yourself. Is your own message, a very strong message, being lost in filler words that are out there? Simple solution, have someone count that for you. Yeah, that's it. Have someone count that for you, and they will go away. And stop finding out, you'll start to figure out where your other crutches are. One of my crutches right now is so. My crutches change over time. I put so in front of everywhere. Now that I've said that, watch how many times I do that. So, how do you take the first action to improve? Personally, I joined Toastmasters. Does that mean you have to join Toastmasters? No, that's how I dealt with it. But it's not a requirement. The only requirement is that you take action to do something about it. I learned to make the most of my time. I'm not wasting my time sitting in front of the television. But I practice my speeches when I'm driving to work. It would take me 30 minutes to get to work. And so I would practice my speeches during the commercial. 7 minutes up, 7 minutes back. 15 minutes a day will make a world of difference in how effective you will end up communicating. Another thing you have to do is break out of your comfort zone and be willing to take chances. Practice in front of family, friends, colleagues, whomever. When I first joined Toastmasters, it took almost 2 years before I practiced my first speech in front of my wife. I was on my way out the door to a speech competition in Canada where the winner would go on to the World Semifinals and be in the top 81 in the world. Seemed like a good time. I wrote a 7-minute speech about my dog Kevin in rescuing animals. I was so nervous I did the speech in 5 minutes. There's a line in it that says millions of dogs and cats. I was so tongue-tied, I said millions of dogs and a cat. She couldn't stop laughing. She knew it was a one-time gag, but the effort I put in to get there. I knew that my family would get behind me and support me. My communication skills, my confidence level, and subsequent success grew exponentially when I involved my family, friends, and colleagues in my learning process. Other easy actions that you can take. You don't have to follow everything that I did, but do something. Get a mentor. Your mentor doesn't have to be a professional speaker. They don't even have to be a speaker. Have someone pay attention to what you're doing who can provide you good, solid, honest, public speaking editing. Be a mentor. As soon as you become conscious of your own communication style and skills, you will get better when you're mentoring others because you're going to be paying attention to what's going on. Start attending other book signings, book reading, watch C-SPAN, book TV, and figure out what you like and what you don't like. You don't have to be exactly like that person is, but figure out what's working and what's not working. And start to take on some of those things. When you do that, you will become better at what you're doing. Write out your elevator speech. And keep a folder or a notebook. As authors, we do this all the time for the notes we want for our books. But you have a notebook or folder for the anecdotes you want to share with others, for people to really get to know you. So now that we're all ready for action, if you're published, do you remember the first time you opened up that box and you saw your books there for the first time? That elation is what experienced speakers get when they're in the moment. That same elation can be confused sometimes for fear. That's what today's goal is. is to get you into feeling that same way of opening that box every time you're standing in front of a group of people or having that conversation with that one person. We'll get to the root cause, and by understanding the root causes of why we might fear public speaking, will help to get us to how to fix it and make it just a little bit better. So I'm going to share a picture of my then 10-year-old daughter. She was getting her ears pierced. That is fear. Welcome to success. Standing victoriously in front of us. Why do we get anxious? When we understand the whys, we'll figure out the hows. So let's figure out why we get anxious. We're out of our comfort zone. We're in a new situation. Imagine driving through a town or a city you've never been in before, and you do not have a map and you do not have a GPS. That same, am I going the right way feeling is the same fear that might be going through you when you're standing in front of someone because it's a new situation. We might also ask ourselves, what if I fail? What if I embarrass myself? What if I bore the audience? I'm going to make this really simple. Don't. Don't stand in front of someone and say, hi, my name is Dowd, and I'm really excited to be here. The audience is going to feed off of you, and you're going to feed off of the audience. Use it to intensify the emotion that you're having. Use it to your advantage. You may never get over the fear, but you can always control the fear. Another reason is this lack of experience. And so, what do? We avoid it. In the 7th grade, I gave a presentation. And my head was spinning, I was all over the place, dizzy head, and I sat in the wrong seat, in the wrong row. I wasn't even close. And what's your first thought when you do that? I'm never going to publicly speak again. And I'm going to do what I can to avoid it. And what happens when we avoid it? That fear becomes a little steeper the next time you have to do it. That's why you want to constantly do it to level the playing field, so you're constantly ready for it and you're refining and honing. Is there a right or a wrong way to do a book signing? No. So you use your creativity to figure out how you want to do it based off of what you want to do and what your audience wants. So in a 30-second book summary, are you ready to market your books? Are you ready to tell people how it differs from everyone else? When you market your books to book buyers, you may have no more than that 30 seconds. No more than that 7 seconds. Are you ready for that? Your book's success is contingent on your ability to be clear, concise, and succinct. Oh, and by the way, you can't avoid public speaking. I use my dizzy head, my heart palpitation, my shallow breathing, tack on a red face, tense shoulders, upright stance. All of that's normal. But when you start to realize that it's normal and everyone goes through it, maybe your angst can go down just a little bit. Being conscious of it is half the battle. We all have these different symptoms that come up. But when we know that they're coming and we can do something about it. My legs used to shake uncontrollably. Why do you think I started the presentation up front? I got my blood flowing, I got closer to the audience, I engaged the audience, and I was able to control that symptom. And that's, for me, individual. Figure out what your individual symptoms are, and you can do something about it. So how many of you have heard that you would rather die than publicly speak? This chart comes from an individual who Googled, and I quote, died in a blank accident. That's not as bad as you think. We carry this deaf perception about public speaking. But the good news is that public speaking didn't even make the list. Apologies for those who wanted to take that knitting class, and for those of us who think we want to start blogging. We have to go back to when we were children. The childhood inhibition. You need to be you. I used to do everything in my power to impress the people around me. Take my book, look at this, look at me. And it wasn't me. What I found is that my true comfort level, that thing that keeps us from getting over anxious and over fearful, that comfort level came when I was really being me. When I was the guy sitting at the dinner table talking to my family. You have to learn to teach yourself to be you in these types of situations. As an author, you know who you are, so don't change who you are. Just figure out a way to convey who you are. As professional speakers, there's an axiom out there that you don't have to be funny unless you want to get paid. We're not all aspiring to be professional speakers. However, as authors, we do need to keep the audience engaged. And every once in a while, a little bit of humor keeps the intention of the audience and keeps the audience engaged and listening to what you're going through. Humor adds to the quality of the presentation. It lightens the mood, breaks up some monotony that's out there. Even if you're reading serious chapters from your book, make a quick comment in between. Break up that monotony. What you want is people to like you. Stop getting people to like your book. When they like you, they will like you. Use personal stories. They don't have to all be stories from your book. Use personal stories. Grab from that folder or that notebook that's out there. Your stories have a message. Just find a way to support that message. And not everything has to be funny. Just share personal stories. And by finding something that is familiar to you, you will be more comfortable, and the people around you will be more comfortable. I'm going to share a story. I wrote a speech about a friend of mine who passed away at the age of 23 or 24 from cystic fibrosis. A year later on Facebook, his sister put a comment that said, "This is the 23rd anniversary of his death, and he was an inspiration to all of us." Battling back and forth with myself. I haven't talked to her since the funeral. And I decided to put a note on there that said, "I am sending his message to the masses with a speech I wrote through Toastmasters." She sends back a note saying, "Can I see the video?" Again, battling back and forth for a couple hours, I decided to send the video. I don't hear from her again. A couple days later, I got a friend request from a friend of hers with the last name Smith. And I wasn't going to accept it, but I kept reading. And it said, "I was 9 years old when he passed away. He was my cousin. And he was an inspiration. And your video has gone viral through the family, friends, and neighbors. Can we talk?" And so we talked. And we spoke for about an hour, sharing Jack's stories back and forth. And I said, "This is incredible. It's great to know you. Thank you so much." And she said, "That's not why I called." During this slow time around Christmas, I shared your video with my boss. And we'd like you to come down and talk to us as a keynote speaker at the Nurses Convention. My very first keynote address, one of my higher paydays to date. But more importantly, in that audience was Jack's mom, his sister, his cousin, and his aunt. We went out to dinner that night. I hadn't seen most of them. I had met half of them and hadn't seen his mother since the funeral. After a couple drinks throughout the evening, I think there were 2 times, and I'm very serious, 2 times that she thought I was Jack. She went to pay the bill, and I said, "No, you can't do that." She said, "I can and I will." Today was a dream. The message of this story is that we have a way to touch people. And if we touch people verbally, we'll find a way to touch people with our books that are out there. So let's make all of this angst go away. You can't. It won't go away. World-class athletes, actors and actresses, Oscar winning, get the same feeling. It may not be at the same level, but there is that type of anxiety. Or maybe it's just a bit of adrenaline. You'll never make it go away, but what you can do is control. Control comes with preparation. I was sitting at the state level to win the state championship with Toastmasters with an inspirational speech, and I can't remember the first line. I had a chance to go to the world semifinals of public speaking, and I repeated a line. And in both cases, I knew I lost the competition as soon as those mistakes happened. And I gave the best speeches of my life after. Because what I stopped doing is worrying about the judges, and I started worrying about my message in the office. That's what we need to get to, is the message of one another. But I also realized during those mistakes that I can keep making the same mistakes if I don't do anything about it, so I changed my practice routines. And the key message here is you must practice and prepare. How you do it is what works for you. I was practicing in my car to work, except it became very one-way. Not driving, this speech. Because all I would do is talk to my steering wheel. I didn't share or do anything else to make my speech any better. But there are things out there like gestures and voice inflection that you can bring in facial expression. So I learned to practice differently and not just practice in the car. So as authors, are you prepared to answer the question, what makes your book different than anyone else's? How is your book going to inspire me? You can't wing it. We must find ways to prepare, even when we can't come up with a question or a scenario. So take down what works and what doesn't. And as you continue to do more and more of these, take notes on what's working and what's not. Where did you struggle? What can you do to improve it? There are several ways to prepare. Write it all in. I'm a big fan of writing it all out. It may not work for you. If you are going to write it all out. Maybe take it down to note cards or get rid of the notes altogether. But do yourself a favor. Put down the key points you want people to walk away with. For those that wing it, they get caught up in conversations or Q&A and they forget those points. Every key point I want walked away is sitting here or it's up here. And I know that you won't walk away without these key points. Practice the word choice. Practice the points you want out there. Write out your cues. Maybe there's a time you want to do this. Write it out until you're used to doing that. Repetition. And this is the hardest when it comes to finding time to do it, but keep doing it. That fear does this the more and more you do it. It's all about being up on stage and doing it constantly. Find a mirror. You may scoff, but find a mirror. It will help you and start to figure out how you look and feel. Family, friends, and network. Stage time. When you're up on stage, it is a matter of full-blown practice. Not just reading a chapter from your book. Well, that went well. It's how are you going to look? How are you going to use the stage? It is a full-blown dress rehearsal. And when you practice in the moment, you would become better when you're actually in that moment. When you make a mistake, don't stop and start over again. I had a piano teacher, I would start over again every time I messed up a note, which by the way was usually about three notes in. Muscle through it. Because what you'll do is you'll practice the entire presentation at that point. And you'll figure out where some of your mistakes are coming up most often. Control what you can control. By getting here earlier, I got a chance to figure out what the lighting was going to be, what the temperature was going to be. I got a chance to set up, and I was able to reduce my fear level because I can control some of the things that go wrong. You get here an hour early, and what do? They're all eating breakfast in here. What did I do? I got some things ready, and I adapted, and I had the time to breathe while I was doing it. You need to be a student of yourself. And that includes videotape, It includes being open to feedback, playing to your strength, and using familiar pieces. I'm running out of time here, so I'm going to just touch some of this, but there is some takeaway handouts that you can look through in the folder. But there's two ways when it comes to success. One is the visual mental component of it. You need to visualize your own success. Dale Carnegie once said, you can conquer almost any fear if you only make up your mind to do so. For remember, fear doesn't exist anywhere except in your mind. You need to believe that you should be here. You need to believe you have a strong message. But that mental, by the way, translates into the physical. Whether you're going to sweat, shake, heart palpitations, some things you can do on the physical side. Stretch yourself out. Don't have caffeine before you speak. Do some exercise. Get some blood flowing the right way. People are here today, or here at a book signing for their enjoyment and to see you. They don't want to see you fail. You are going to be harder on yourself than anyone else out there, so take a breath and realize that you'll be okay. In a very tense, competitive environment with Toastmasters, I asked some guy what he did to relax a little bit, and he said, live in the present. This moment will never come back again to stand in front of this group of people on this stage doing what you're doing right now. So I will say to you, live in the present. If you noticed throughout this presentation, I did a variety of ways to present. One, I did a speech out in front of you with no notes. Two, I had a lectern speech, no presentation, and the other I had a PowerPoint. There's no right or wrong way to do it, and do what works for you, and be creative enough to play to your strengths and play to what the audience. Throughout today, my books are available. They'll be there. We can chat. Do you take credit cards? I do it on loans. If you don't have money today, I'll take it, and you can send me a check later. But again, remember, public speaking is more about confidence than it is about communication. Public speaking is more than a lectern, a podium, or a stage. It is everywhere. The hardest thing to do is to take the first action. Public speaking is a learned skill that must constantly be honed. And finally, your success is directly correlated to